Airline pilots and flight attendants, what are some things most passengers don't know but should? I don't make the rules, so please don't try to make me look like an idiot because you don't feel like turning your phone, iPad, laptop, or other device off. Please stop acting out because you have to turn your phone off while we taxi out and take off. Also, once the sun sets, there's no amount of covering your screen you can do to keep me from knowing your stuff is on. The telltale blue light above your head can't be hidden. Also, it really makes me feel like a pile of insignificant crap when I have a big, genuine smile on my face and say hello while you board, and you either look at me with a scowl or ignore me completely. It makes my day 30 times better when someone smiles back and says hello. Like, really. Yeah, that's why I tend to say, nice to see you've got a good looking flight crew today. This should be a good flight. Oh yeah, before I forget, Other Me's over on Rufus Story is doing what he does best, unpacking some crazy relationship stories. It's a good time, I promise. Links in the description below if you're down. Alright, back to the stories. Story 2. There are some days I wish I could just do an I was a flight attendant for a major US airline for 5 years AMA. Here are a few random things that come to mind that people don't know but should. We don't have a clue what city we're currently flying over. If you get up when the seatbelt sign is on, a flight attendant will ask you to return to your seat. It's not because they're seatbelt socialists, but because we get fined by the FAA if we don't. And you really should pay attention to that sign. It's on because turbulence has been reported in the area. I've seen people fly up and hit the ceiling in bad turbulence, and it's not pretty. Don't poke flight attendants ever. We don't like it at all. Usually what happens to be at poking level is a bum, and I've met very few people who like being screwed in the back by a complete stranger. We like food. We're known to play favorites with people who bring us food. Like that one guy who posted about bringing the flight crew a bag of chocolates. When I go back to flying, he's allowed to fly with me anytime. In the highly unlikely event of an emergency that will require the opening of emergency exit doors by someone other than a flight attendant, when you turn that handle in the direction of the arrow, let go of the door and hold on to something inside the plane. The door should open automatically, and if you're holding on to the door, you will go out. Story 3. Not a pilot or a crew, but as a frequent flyer, I'd like everyone to know the following. The left side of the moving walkway is for walking, and by walking I don't mean bumbling along like an overwhelmed Raymond Babbitt in a casino. Actually, you know what? Just keep to the right at all times unless you're actively passing someone. There's always someone who needs to get where they're going faster than you. All bags, especially backpacks, should be carried in front of you while boarding the aircraft. You have better control over your things that way. Every time a rotund adolescent with no spatial awareness or knowledge of pivot points turns around and hits an innocent bystander in the face with their monogrammed LL Bean backpack, God ends a kitten. Also, every time some ditzy sorority girl smacks a fellow passenger with the wretched green Vera Bradley monstrosity of a duffel bag slung over her shoulder, a dreamy guy on the lacrosse team gets arrested. Hey, Captain Elbows, keep your hands down and arms on your side of the armrest. Talking about armrest, the middle armrest stays down for the entire duration of the flight. I don't care how much space you need, it doesn't give you the right to infringe upon someone else's space that they paid hundreds or thousands of dollars to occupy. We exit the airplane from the front to the back unless someone is clearly staying seated to let others go by. Big boys and girls take turns. They don't push their way through everyone else like there's a Jonas Brothers concert on the jetway. Story 4. Not a flight attendant, but a ramp agent, baggage handler here. Based on my training, I learned that passengers are allowed to bring a small pig on a flight in their seat if they can prove it's for comfort. I'm not sure how you'd prove that, maybe with a doctor's note or something similar. Passengers are also allowed to bring small monkeys and miniature horses for the same reason. On at least 1 out of every 3 flights I load, there's a cadaver on board. These are often people being flown to be buried where they're from, like soldiers or unfortunate vacationers. Being near a large zoo, I've always loaded baby tigers, leopards, and wolves. Last but not least, there have been 2 passenger flights that came in completely full of money. We're talking like $38 million between the two. You truly never know what's underneath a plane, but keep an eye out. If you see a long cardboard box, it's probably a departed person. Story 5. Pilot here. 99% of passengers will know this, but please do not smoke anywhere on board the plane. It is one of the most dangerous things you can do on board, a fire hazard, and has cost many lives even after successfully landing a plane where a fire has started. If you are caught, you will be arrested, prosecuted, and banned from the airline. It doesn't happen often, but now and again, some sneaky fellow will try and take a few drags in one of the rear toilets. None of the crew or police will be amused. Also, it's okay to visit the flight deck when we are on the ground. It's the best part of my job, especially when the passenger is interested and has lots of questions. You can ask during boarding to take a peek in depending on how busy we are, but it's better after landing when everyone is disembarking. Lastly, every time we are coming into land, we have actually planned for what happens if we have to abort the landing or go around. This can actually be pretty worrying for a passenger. 1 minute we're descending towards the runway, getting closer and closer to the ground, just about to touch down, and then the next minute the engines roar to full thrust, the plane pitches up and starts climbing quickly, similar to a takeoff. If this happens, it's nothing to worry about. It's a normal maneuver for us, and the go around could be caused by a multitude of reasons. It does not mean we're about to crash or had a near miss. I've gone around from 50 feet above the runway because the tailwind went out of limits. ATC can instruct you to go around. The runway could be blocked. A gust of wind could have made the approach unstable. A slight technical issue, such as the speed brake not arming, means you have to go around, sort the issue and try again. If the weather is marginal, fog, low cloud, or wind shear, we may make several attempts to land before deciding that it definitely won't improve before diverting. Story 6. I was a flight attendant for exactly 5 miserable months of my young life before I quit in the middle of a trip. I've worked in the restaurant industry for years and truly do enjoy working with people, which is why, despite my boyfriend's better judgment, I thought I would love being an FA. I have never been disrespected as much in my whole life as I was in a single day of working for the airline. I kept a journal of my experiences, most of it containing "screw you," and go back to read it whenever I think I'm having a bad day because it was that bad. I don't know what or why people think they're entitled to anything they want, as well as treating the people who make the airplane fly and take care of you in a time of crisis this way, but it really was bizarre and sad. My faith in humanity was lost. I once had a white woman who was late for the flight come up to me in front of everyone and ask to be moved to a different seat because she didn't want to sit next to the overweight black girl. Have some respect for your flight crew. They work crappy hours and deal with even crappier people all day long. Say hi back when they greet you with a smile. That's all I wish passengers knew. Story 7. I have this great story and I don't know where else to tell it, so I'm just going to shoehorn it in here. So I'm getting onto an airplane and there's the obligatory long line. I'm just inside the plane, my feet halfway on the ramp and halfway on the plane. I realize the line hasn't moved at all in literally minutes. I peer around and see a guy eating a sandwich full in the aisle. For a moment I'm angry, but also astounded at the freaking guts this guy has to hold up the line with his sandwich. But I soon realize that he's not the one keeping the line up. He's just watching his 2 friends bumbling their way to getting their carry-ons into the overhead compartment. They just cannot figure out how to do it. Finally, a flight attendant asks, "What's the holdup?" It's pretty early in the morning, so we all kind of mumble something about a guy in the aisle. She pushes through and walks right up to the 2 crap brains who can't grasp how the overhead works. "Do you need help with that?" she asks in the sugary sweet voice I associate with wanting to harm something. "No, you got it," the schmucks say. Everyone is staring at them now. Who is that oblivious? She could have taken off her heel and harmed them, and the dozen people who had been stationary in line at 4 a.m. would testify that they hadn't seen a goddamn thing. But she doesn't. She just walks calmly back through the line and stands by the intercom. After 30 seconds, she picks it up and makes the most glorious passive-aggressive comment I have ever heard. "I'd just like to remind all passengers that we have many people who need to board the plane, and it's best that they keep out of the aisle." Over the loudspeaker, the schmucks are clearly shocked that she would do such a thing. After another minute, they finally manage to lower their crap and close the overhead and quietly sit down. If we weren't so busy piling in, there would have been a slow clap for her, I swear to God. Story 8. Just because it's sunny where we're flying from and sunny where we're flying to doesn't mean that there isn't a huge hurricane between us. Your iPhone doesn't trump the weather and forecasts I have access to. If you see a crew member in the airport, they don't know what time the flight to Milwaukee leaves. They don't know what the new gate to Tampa is. They might know where the restroom is, but chances are there are no fewer than 2 signs in plain sight from where you stand with directions. Don't ask me if I'm sober or infer that you think I'm intoxicated unless you legitimately think I'm intoxicated. If a passenger accuses a crew member of this and we later have an accident, my sobriety will forever be questioned. To avoid this dilemma, if someone jokingly questions my sobriety, I will willingly remove myself from the flight and proceed immediately to a company-administered substance test. You can explain to all your fellow passengers how funny it was when you asked because your flight is now delayed. Yes, the plane is safe. Stop asking. Story 9. Just because the weather is fine where you are and your Uncle Billy in New York says the weather is fine doesn't mean we're lying to you when we say the flight is delayed because of the weather. Airports and air traffic control facilities can only handle so many arrivals per hour. If the weather goes to crap for 2 hours and nothing can land, it creates a backlog of planes waiting to go to that airport. When things ease up, the FAA might start allowing planes to take off for that airport again, but obviously, if they let them all take off at once, it's going to cause some problems when they all arrive at the destination airport at the same time. So the weather may have cleared up to a beautiful sunny day, but your flight can still be late because the airport hasn't recovered enough yet where they can handle all the inbound flights, sort of like a big traffic light, if you will. But I know our fancy airline meteorology departments are no match for your iPhone, buddy. I knew it. The FAA is just orchestrating a global game of red light, green light with airplanes, and I'm always it. Story 10. As a former frequent flyer for work, I'm amazed by the number of flight attendants and other airline workers who report rude and inconsiderate passengers. From what I've seen through many delays, misconnections, circling in the air, lost luggage, enhanced screening, and more, the best way to ease your travel experience is the following. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here at the airport doors. Understand that you are traveling on a complex series of systems with limited fail-safes. The safety protocols are designed to get you to your destination alive, not necessarily comfortably, but alive. Planes can't just pull over if there's a problem, and the rules are in place for that very purpose. Smile and make eye contact with everyone who smiles at you, passengers included. Not some insincere grin, but a friendly smile and a nod. It can make a difference. When complaining, I always start with, I know it's not your fault, but I found that this diffuses any accusatory feelings by making it clear that you're not blaming the person, you just need their help. If I'm really stressed, late, or upset, I start with, I'm sorry if I'm a bit stressed, late, or upset, but I was hoping you could help me with. Be polite, be firm, be polite, but be firm. If they say no, ask what they can do. If you don't ask, you'll never know. I once talked my way onto a full flight and ended up sitting in the flight attendant jump seat getting to my meeting on time. Anyone at a ticketing terminal is your friend if you need to change flights. I've skipped countless lines by finding a lone ticketing agent working on something else and politely asking for help. Just so you know, I'm not some slick salesman or politician. I'm just a systems engineer and project manager. Story 11. As an attorney who deals with a lot of aviation-related cases, my bosses are all former/current commercial pilots as well as litigators. Yes, they are impressive. I'm also a private pilot myself. I can tell you the one shocking statistic I know. You're 3 times more likely to survive a crash if you're facing the rear of the plane. However, for whatever reason, people don't want their seats to face backward. They want them to face forward. But in the event of turbulence or a crash, you're literally 300% more likely to be saved from a fatality than if you were facing forward. Funny how that works. Story 12. As someone who flies out every weekend for work, I have to say, I hate flying. I hate everything about it. The food, the people, the cramped space, the security. Lord, how I hate TSA. Most of them are nice, but there are some god-awful people working there, and you can't tell them anything because they hold such power. I hate how my molars hurt once in a while like they're going to explode from the pain. I hate that we can't bring liquids in containers larger than 3 ounces and are expected to buy $5 water bottles inside. I hate the dry air on a flight. I hate how there are so many classes, sky priority, and clubs that by the time it gets to general boarding, it's not general anymore, but just a small group of people feeling like crap who have to check their carry-ons. And the seats. Last weekend, the boy's father who sat next to me thought it'd be best for his son to take my window seat and for him to sit in his son's seat. I let him take it, but only because I knew it would mean a lot for the kid, thinking how I would feel as that child. But that man is a freaking piece of crap person. You did not pay for that goddamn seat, and for coach passengers, a window seat is a gift given to us from Zeus. Aside from all of that, aside from how much hate I have for flying, I'm always super courteous and kind to my flight attendants because I know they have to wait on schmucks every day and do it with a smile. I have respect for you all. Story 13. Most of the time, it's not the crew's fault we're running late. We want to get back home as much as you do. I'd say close to 70% of the time, delays are due to passenger-related problems, late check-ins, a passenger missing in the terminal, and so on. Get to the airport early, board when you're called, sit down, and get your seatbelts on. Whenever we ferry a plane with no passengers, we usually leave close to 20 to 25 minutes early because we don't have to deal with those issues. Keep in mind that flight attendants are worked to death, so take it easy on them. If they ask you to do something, just do it. Please, please don't ask for a cup of water before takeoff. The galley is usually closed and secured for takeoff, and if people start asking for drinks, it's a hassle for them to open it and then close it again. Story 14. You can ask to switch seats if there are some available after all the passengers have been seated. It amazes me how many people will suffer with a cramped middle seat when there are tons of window and aisle seats available on a flight. Also, for airlines that are now charging for carry-ons, read the fine print. Some airlines still allow you to have a personal item. They say a small purse, laptop bag, etc. But as long as it fits under the seat, you can bring it on the plane. For weekend trips, I pack a backpack, sometimes larger than the carry-on bags that people pay for. I've never once been stopped and forced to pay at the gate. I've literally flown to New York City and back one weekend for $40, $20 each way, no baggage fees. Story 15. Ground support here. What do you want to know about loading, offloading, de-icing, pushbacks, or ground equipment like jet bridges, ground power units, GPUs, tractors, or air starts? Hit me up. I need some dang karma and I'm happy to answer any questions. Got questions about lost bags? I can help with that too, and I have some tips for you frequent flyers. Internal ID tags are key. Put an ID tag with some sort of contact information inside and outer pocket of your bag. Don't rely on tags attached to the outside, as they'll likely be destroyed. I found bags with missing transfer bags and reunited them with their rightful owners because they simply put a business card with their name and flight number inside a pocket. Remove old tags. Is your bag lost? Maybe if it didn't have multiple tags on it, it wouldn't be. Remember, a machine with a laser scans the tag as it goes down the baggage belt at the airport and sorts them automatically. They sometimes fault out and send bags down the wrong belt, leading to a lost bag. Overhead bin etiquette. Don't be a schmuck and bring a massive bag to the plane, trying to shove it into the overhead compartment. It's not going to fit, and it will delay the flight. Boarding times. Check your boarding pass, but know that boarding time isn't what it literally says on the ticket. If it says boarding time is 10:15, be at the gate by 9:45 or even earlier for domestic flights. For international or trans-border flights, don't be late. It's a stupid move. Ground support will have to pull your bag off the plane and that can cause delays. Don't do that, man. Story 16. Pilots and flight attendants wish you knew a few things. For example, we agree that the no electronics rule during takeoff and landing seems silly, but our jobs are on the line if we don't enforce it. So please, just be nice and play along. Also, your cell phone does cause interference with the aircraft's interphone system and the pilots' headsets, the very ones they use to communicate with air traffic control. Is your single cell signal likely to cause a problem? Probably not. But if half the plane is on their phones, those combined signals will mess up critical communication. Do you really want your pilots cut off from ATC? What if ATC is trying to warn them about incoming traffic or instructing them to change altitude? Or perhaps ATC needs to inform them about turbulence and bad weather ahead. They'll never know because people couldn't go 2 hours without contact with the outside world. Story 17. I'm going to throw my 2 cents in about a truly awful travel experience. My last flight, coming back from Maui, Hawaii, was absolutely terrible. I hated that trip. My ears have trouble with pressure changes because I had surgery as a newborn to address fluid issues with my eustachian tubes. Even so, I'd still rather fly than sail. I was already incredibly irritated. People kept putting their arms over the armrests, and of course, there was a constantly crying baby. But I finally made it to LAX and then on to Memphis. When we landed in Memphis, I nearly flipped out. It takes a lot for me to lose my cool, but after 2 sleepless flights, enduring fast food, which I loathed, but it was all the airport offered, and being stuffed onto an overbooked flight twice, I'd simply had enough. I came within 2 seconds of yelling at people. When you get up to exit the plane, have your stuff ready to go. Be ready to move. The process of getting everyone off the plane in Memphis took a staggering 50 minutes. This was a standard 737, nothing special, just a couple hundred people. 50 minutes. I was at the very back. I always book there due to a nagging fear that the day I book front seats will crash. Every time the line moved, people suddenly acted like they needed to grab everything, put on makeup, pack up their laptops, and hold up the entire line. Be ready to go by the time the line reaches you. Seeing people not prepared enraged me to a level I didn't know existed. To top it all off, when I finally reached the gate for my connecting flight home, which I was nearly late for, I discovered it had been canceled. Definitely not my day. And if any of these stories are getting to you too because you've had the same or similar experience, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 18. I'm not a pilot, so I welcome any corrections if this is wrong, but I used to work at an airport as a ramp agent loading luggage into the cargo bins. When staff ask you to move, limit the number of people allowed on the plane or specify where items need to be placed on the plane. It's sometimes because the weight needs to be precisely balanced. Ramp agents complete a cargo inventory form that provides pilots with a ballpark idea of the weight in each cargo bin, specifying the number of bags, plane sides, items loaded at the plane side, and heavy bags. If too much weight is unaccounted for in certain parts of the plane, the balance can be thrown off enough to potentially cause a crash. This is especially true for smaller aircraft. In fact, there was a tragic airline accident where this exact scenario occurred. A significant number of bags were unaccounted for in the rear cargo bin of a smaller plane. When it took off and began its ascent, the tail was weighed down enough to flip the plane and cause it to crash, terminating everyone on board. Most of the time, this isn't really pertinent information for passengers. However, if a flight attendant asks you to move, please realize it might be for crucial safety reasons. Similarly, if you are a particularly heavy person, you may be more likely to be asked to move. It's not because the staff dislikes larger individuals, it's because they need to balance the weight in the plane and your position might be offsetting it the most. Story 19. For anyone who's afraid to fly, rest assured that the FAA is extremely strict about safety. They genuinely aim for 0 fatalities in a year and eventually 0 incidents. Pilots undergo extensive training for emergency situations, and a pilot could be seriously reprimanded just for being tired. Any alcohol consumption will certainly cause a pilot to lose their job immediately. Just remember, turbulence is nothing compared to the maximum stress those wings can withstand. Aluminum is incredibly strong and lightweight, and carbon fiber used in the hull and wings of the newer 787s is even stronger and lighter. The amount of precaution taken before each flight is immense, and every pilot has a handy-dandy pre-flight checklist. Also, fun fact, most pilots are trained in weather, geography, topography, and climate, so they know about as much as any weatherman. Story 20. My mother-in-law is a flight attendant with over 30 years of experience and countless stories. She shared a few important things about flying. When a flight attendant is standing at the entryway of the plane, greeting you as you walk in, they are actually checking you out. They're screening you for signs of intoxication, erratic behavior, or any potential problems. Pilots used to come out and deal with problematic passengers before takeoff. Now, if a flight attendant has an issue and wants a passenger removed, that passenger is off the flight. While the pilot has the final say, they will back up the flight attendant 100% of the time now, no questions asked. If you anger a flight attendant, you are off that flight. Flight attendants can and will have federal charges filed against you if you become cruel or disruptive. They don't mess around anymore. They may seem really nice and polite, but they are used to dealing with schmucks every day. If they tell you to sit down and shut your mouth and you tell them they can't do anything to you, they absolutely can. My mother-in-law has seen rude men start weeping like babies after she writes up a federal report that will be turned over to the very polite police officers waiting at the gate for the plane. Turbulence is like grass smokers in the road. It won't crash a plane, it just makes everyone nauseous and is therefore avoided whenever possible. Story 21. Oxygen on planes is generated on demand by a chemical reaction in the ceiling compartments. Each generator supplies oxygen for a set number of seats, usually around 8. So when you pull down sharply on the mask, you initiate this chemical reaction. You'll only have a few minutes of oxygen supply, which is why the pilot will immediately initiate an emergency descent. If the loud bang and wind noise from the decompression didn't scare you, prepare to be terrified as the plane dives at a 60-degree angle for a few minutes until it levels off around 20,000 feet. If you're a flight attendant at 30,000 feet or higher and there's decompression but the plane doesn't start to dive, get into the cockpit and check on the pilots. They might be incapacitated. At that point, I hope your flight simulator lessons pay off. And if decompression occurs at 40,000 feet, get your mask on pronto. You only have about 5 seconds before you pass out. Prioritize yourself, get your mask on, then help those around you, including children. Finally, and this isn't something you'll likely be thinking about in the moment, but if you can manage to breathe out during decompression, that would be great. It would prevent your lungs from expanding explosively. Story 22. This might get lost in the sea of comments, but here's my story anyway. I work for a search and rescue organization, which means we're cleared to fly as low as 100 feet. At that altitude, you encounter some seriously turbulent air and a ton of birds. During one training flight, we were practicing equipment drops. After we finished, we closed the drop door and began climbing to gain altitude for the return trip. At this point, the tech crew was relaxed with nothing to do, so we were all lounging around, chatting and discussing how the drops went. We were a bit scattered. One crew member was in the cockpit doorway talking to the pilots, who were both in their seats. Our mission coordinator was sitting on a bench with her legs crossed, and another crew member was in a chair chatting with her. Suddenly, the first officer yelled, "Bird!" and pushed the nose hard down. The mission coordinator hovered above the bench, still with her legs crossed like some kind of levitating monk, before she was abruptly thrown to the floor as the aircraft pulled back up. While all this happened, the crew member in the cockpit doorway was flung into the air and about 20 meters back down the cabin, landing right on top of the mission coordinator in an awkward couple caught in the yak pile. Alright, so forget search and rescue, I'm more interested in the levitating monk training program. Where do I sign up for that? Story 23. Not a pilot or flight attendant, but I am a supervisor for a major US airline. Check-in deadlines are real. All airlines have closing times for check-in. Don't arrive at the airport 10 minutes before your flight is scheduled to leave and then get mad because you're not being checked in. Yes, we know you still have 10 minutes and the airplane is still at the gate, but you're not going to make it. No baggage policies. Not all airlines are like Southwest. Most will charge you for a checked bag. Please read the airline's website for their baggage policies before you go to the airport. Your seat reflects your behavior. There are very small seats in the back next to the bathroom that don't recline all the way. If you're very rude and disrespectful, that's probably where you're going to sit. Service animals versus pets. Lastly, every airline will charge you to bring a pet on the airplane unless it's a service animal. Now, usually we want to see proof of the documents, but it's not legally required. All you have to do is say it's a service animal for emotional support, and boom, free pet on the plane. Legally, we have to let you unless your pet is behaving like a madman, then no. Story 24. As an airline kid, I've been on some extremely turbulent flights. Most of them were with my dad, an airline pilot who always told me to keep that seatbelt on when I'm in my seat, even if the sign isn't illuminated. His exact words were, "You're in a metal tube in the sky. For Christ's sake, be prepared to bounce around." Seattle-Tacoma Airport was by far the worst for flying into. Several times on descent, we would hit air pockets and immediately drop a few hundred feet. This resulted in lots of bump heads and bruises for the unprepared. Orange County, SNA, however, offers by far the most entertaining takeoff. If you've never flown out of this airport, here's the deal. The flight path goes over a very ritzy community in the area. The residents have somehow successfully lobbied the FAA to adjust the normal takeoff procedures for this airport so their neighborhood is quieter. So instead of a normally inclined takeoff angle, flights out of Orange County take off at what feels like a vertical ascent. Even more fun, after the flight reaches a certain altitude, the pilots abruptly cut the engine power by 50%. It's a roller coaster ride on an epic level. The absolute best part is watching people on their very first flight out of this airport. It's all I can do not to laugh when they freak out as the engines are throttled back. I've also spent time on flights so turbulent that 95% of the passengers refused meal service because they were retching due to the extreme movement of the plane. Meanwhile, I'm just chowing down on a seemingly endless supply of food that the flight attendant keeps handing out to me because I'm so unaffected by the ordeal. Story 25. I have a question for pilots or flight attendants. One of the scariest flights I've ever been on was when we had to fly through a storm. We were kept in the air over the airport for a while because a lot of planes were landing at the same time as ours. Everything was cool except for some turbulence. When we went to land, the wheels hit the ground, and as soon as that happened, we got a huge shock by taking off again almost instantly. The pilot came on the microphone a few minutes later apologizing because another plane was crossing our landing strip and he had to take off again to avoid a collision. Does this happen often? I've been scared of flying ever since, and that was 9 years ago. Story 26. Low-cost regional airlines often hire new pilots by airline standards who may not be fully certified for the specific aircraft they're flying or who might be extremely incompetent in certain situations. For example, Continental Express and connection flights weren't even flown by Continental pilots. They contracted out smaller airlines to operate their planes, then heavily pressured them to complete flights and generate revenue. This, in turn, led these smaller airlines to pressure their pilots and cut corners in terms of pilot certification and the number of continuous hours their pilots worked. On top of all that, they paid them very little for their work. While this practice still occurs, it's significantly less common now. If you're considering a low-cost regional airline, even if it has a big name attached to it, research it thoroughly to see if it has a good track record. Story 27. Using electronics during a flight will not interfere with safety. Now, this is an issue everyone thinks they're right about, so I'll tell you the facts and let you research to your heart's content. Using wireless communication during flights can cause interference. It has been proven to be possible. It is a theoretical and realistically possible outcome. However, the likelihood of any actual interference is beyond minuscule. There are 0 confirmed cases where this interference has caused a plane to crash. Furthermore, airplanes are incredibly safe. Can you even imagine the red tape, safety measures, training drills, etc. that are in place? Let me tell you, they're extensive. A plane could lose half of its systems, an engine could be torn off the side, all communications could disappear, and the pilot could still land the plane. My dad loves to tell me stories he sees on the news about how people almost passed away in planes. They didn't. The biggest reason people are afraid of airplanes is because they listen to the media. I've been flying with my father in all types of planes since I was a baby without anything resembling trouble. My father is a commercial airline pilot, and you wouldn't believe the time I've spent talking with him and studying these issues. Story 28. Daughter of a commercial airline pilot here. Don't be a schmuck to the pilots if your flight is delayed. And don't be a schmuck to them if you get stuck in line for departure. I worked at an air traffic control facility for a 6-month internship. I've seen 35 deep departure stacks because of inclement weather on the East Coast. It is not your pilot's fault 99.9% of the time if your plane is delayed. Don't frickin' yell at the pilots. Seriously, people act like the pilots don't want to get to their destination as much as the passengers do. When my dad gets to New York City or LA, he goes running, goes out to dinner, and does things he enjoys. He really doesn't want to be on that plane for 10 hours any more than you do. So if you want to take out your flight delay aggression on someone, find another way, but don't take it out on the pilots or flight attendants. I got my Bachelor of Science in Air Traffic Management, so I know a thing or two about air traffic control. Controllers are the ones who issue delays. They have to do this so the plane you're on doesn't crash. Get it? Controllers aren't delaying you for random reasons. Delays make being an air traffic controller hellish, but they are in place for your safety. If even one flight is delayed in NYC or a gate hold is put out for major airports on the East Coast, this causes obscene problems for West Coast airports as well. If O'Hare is shut down due to tornadic activity in the area, which, trust me, you want to be delayed if this is the case, Phoenix and Los Angeles are so messed up for gate space, it's not even funny. Story 29. I'm not a pilot, but my friend's dad is. About 10 years ago, I was visiting her halfway around the world, and we had the incredible experience of riding in the cockpit with him for the entire flight, about 5 hours on a fully loaded commercial plane. At the time, I really wanted to be a pilot in the Navy, just like my dad, and coincidentally, her dad too. As we got close to landing, he and the other pilot, who seemed quite young and rookie-like, actually let me sit in one of the pilot seats. I was then allowed to pull a few of the levers for braking and landing. Now, mind you, I was 15 years old and the plane was full of passengers completely unaware of any of this. It was actually quite a scary experience. Story 30. Is this limited to flight attendants? I'm a ticket agent and boy, the stories I could tell. One thing people definitely should know is that a surprising number of delays are caused by passengers. Yep, passengers. That one person who threw a fit because they couldn't take 4 ounces of liquid through TSA and decided the gate agent was a great target for their wrath, they caused your delay. So did that family who decided it was a great idea to bring 3 strollers and 2 car seats for their single child. That sweet old grandma who insists she doesn't need help getting onto the plane but can't walk faster than 1 step every minute. We have to wait for her. And that last delay you had that the agent told you was due to maintenance, that was thanks to some guy trying to tamper with the smoke alarm in the plane. There are so many delays for other reasons, weather being a big one, and don't even say there's no weather where you are. There might not be, but that doesn't mean there's no weather somewhere else. However, you'd be amazed at how many are caused by the people around you while you're trying to board the plane. This is also part of why gate agents are so strict about cutting off loading times. Airline employees love to help when they can, but there are times when we kind of wish we could just turn to the nearest wall and whack our heads against it a few times just to improve the situation. Story 31. I was cabin crew for 5 years exclusively on long-haul flights. While we all pass numerous exams, tests, and refreshers annually, you never truly know how anyone will react in an emergency. Firefighters and police are tested weekly, but in my 5 years as crew, I personally didn't experience anything that required putting our proper training into use. I'd like to think I wouldn't freeze or fall to pieces, but you just never know. So please pay a bit of attention during the 3 minutes of the safety demonstration and figure out where your nearest exit and its alternative are. You never know, you might end up having to help yourself. Story 32. As a flight attendant, I can tell you that many incidents happen on planes that everyday passengers don't see or consider. Here are a few things to keep in mind. Barefoot is a big no-no. On my last flight, an elderly man accidentally pooped on the floor, stepped in it, and just kept walking like nothing happened. Please do not walk around barefoot. Accidents involving mess happen regularly, in seats, in the lavatories, all over. People also get nosebleeds or their wounds open. Obviously, after we land, the plane is thoroughly cleaned, but in flight, our resources are limited. Tray tables are not changing stations. This happens all the time. Do not change your baby's diaper on the tray table. It's incredibly unsanitary, especially since people use those tray tables to eat, set their personal items, and so on. Lift your own bag. Lastly, it is not a flight attendant's responsibility to lift your bag. Many flight attendants suffer injuries from lifting heavy bags out of kindness, often putting them out of work for months to a year on average. If you packed it, you lift it. If it's too heavy for you, it's too heavy for us. Happy flying, y'all. Story 33. A flight attendant for a European airline for the past 6 years here. I'm late to the party, but I'll still chime in. Many passengers panic when a flight is delayed for technical reasons or when they see maintenance guys board the aircraft. There's really no need to be. That just means we're aware of a problem and won't budge until it has been resolved. It's much better to be aware of a problem on the ground than at 36,000 feet. The pilots do thorough pre-flight checks to ensure everything is okay, and engineers check the aircraft at the end of the day. Flying is safer now than it has ever been, no need to worry. Yes, smoking really is an issue on board. Please do not do it. We're all trained in firefighting, but it's still extremely dangerous to smoke on board. Vaping, on the other hand, is completely harmless but forbidden anyway, purely because it might entice other passengers to light up real cigarettes. The only real problem with e-cigs is their lithium batteries. Many passengers see us as glorified waitresses and waiters, and to be honest, we are for 70% of the trip. But we are also highly trained professionals who are able to deal with any situation on board. There are schmucks on almost every flight for sure, but they are massively outnumbered by nice people, depending on the destination. Stereotypes exist for a reason. A simple smile and politeness will get you a long way with most crew. Story 34. I'm a flight attendant. Here are a few tips and insights from my side. Avoid the plane's coffee and hot tea. I wouldn't recommend drinking coffee or hot tea from the plane. It's made with potable water, but those tanks are rarely cleaned. None of the crew usually drink it. I even had a passenger on one of my flights fill his water bottle using the lavatory sink, and I stressed to him that it wasn't a good idea, but he didn't care. LOL. Delays affect us too. We aren't paid until the main cabin door closes, so we're just as eager to leave as you are. When there are delays, complaining to the cabin crew isn't going to help anything. We're waiting around just like you and want to get back to our families too. E-cigs set off detectors. Smoking your e-cig in the lavatory will set off the detector. A little kindness goes a long way. Bringing a bag of candy or a treat to thank the flight crew will most likely get you free drinks or a seat upgrade. I always hook people up, LOL. Story 35. I didn't see anyone write this unless I missed it. Both pilots and the entire crew want to get off the ground just as much as you do, even earlier if possible. So don't complain to them that they're causing the delay, because they're not, especially when they're not even getting paid during that time. And I also love re-emphasizing that the captain can pretty much remove whoever he wants from the flight, whether it concerns the flight attendants or not. So please be nice to all of your crew. They are just as committed to getting to the same destination as you and just as safely as you, but they don't care one way or another if you make that flight simply because you're upset with something. And if any of these stories got to you too, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. I'll catch you in that video.